Okay, thanks everybody. Welcome to our virtual discussion. I've got Sid here with me, so I'll jump straight into the questions. So Sid, what's your take on it? Pandemic or not? Do you think there's a more immediate need for insights from data?
Hi, Mike. Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're from. I'm actually really thrilled to be part of this this conference by SSOW because it's really interesting, like how things have changed over the year. Because we were all supposed to be together to deliver this panel discussions, but look at us, like me in one continent, you in one other one, and we are having the panel discussions. Quite thrilling and interesting. And yes, it's a quite an interesting topic or a question that you have asked at this point of time, Mike. To be very honest, in this unprecedented time, and we all are like digital first companies, right? Excuse me. We are relying more and more on data we are collecting and making sense out of it, right? Because that's the current situation demands. And now collecting information via field research has become really, really difficult, increasingly difficult, because obviously of the COVID situation, you need to maintain that distance and all those kind of things. So that's the reason I think we are relying more and more on the big data and the data we are collecting at this moment. Let's talk about a little bit of in my field, which is basically user experience, right? And we do collect a lot of first-hand data because that's, I think, the backbone of any kind of good experience that we create, right? It's more of qualitative rather than quantitative. But at this point of time, yes, even though we are not having physical presence, but we are doing it online, but still there is a little bit of ifs and buts, because as you know that like when we do the interviews, it has been done in a controlled environment, like in a UX lab, but right now it's just a Zoom call and the respondent is somewhere and we cannot control that. But having said that, still we are doing the interviews, and at this point of time, because there is some kind of question marks that comes in for while doing these interviews, we are relying more on big data or the data that we are collecting right now. And that's how that like analyzing this data and and they're like this 3 V's of big data: volume, velocity, and variety. They are helping us to configure, to pinpoint the exact information that we are looking for, and understanding the digital users' digital behavior, and then adding that online interview to it. And that's trying to make sense of all the things right now because of the current situation.
Thank you, Sid. That's wonderful insight. I certainly agree. In our organization, as we transitioned to remote working as a result of the pandemic, data became more and more important to us as well, mainly for us to ensure that we were still able to service our customers within a remote environment without the support of our office and the support of our office-based environment that entertained. But I do think that this trend started well before the pandemic. And many organizations would have seen a rapid change in their digital strategies. And organizations who have a greater ability to access and interpret and leverage actionable data and insights will naturally have an advantage over their competitors. At MLC, we established a data and analytics function. And we see generally in the industry an emergence of some new data-specific roles, such as a data scientist, a data engineer, a visualization engineer. I think this is demonstrating the importance of data and what data analytics is being placed in organizations in the future. So can you please give me an example of where you've seen this happen?
Sure, Mike. But first, I must say that when we collect data, we collect the information with users' consent, because I think that's very, very important. That if you're collecting some information, please let the user know. And especially all our European operating system, operating companies, I'm not sure about in Australia, but all our European companies, operating telcos, we are bound by GDPR, okay? And so when we collect, so we do not collect and use any information that we don't have the permission to use. I think that's the first thing that I want to talk about or set the stakes before I move forward. Now, coming to the example, I think I would say that once the user is given permission to our app, My Vodafone app, we'd probably know his or her lifestyle choices, what technology he or she is using at home or office and home or in office, and which digital or social channels he or she is spending more time with. Uh, of course, we do not collect data like Instagram or Facebook, they do, because our data collection is very different. And also we remember, we also do not collect any personal information. By personal information, I mean, we do not store any credit card details or any kind of personal information or sensitive information for that matter. We are more interested into behavioral pattern, and that we collect obviously with not intruding to our users' privacy. And while I was thinking about this, while I was answering this question, I was actually making me think, Mike, that what are the intricacies and challenges of handling big data at MLC? Because you must be having huge amount of collection of data, and then cleansing it, then reconciling it, and then sorting, so on and so forth. So how do you do that at MLC?
Yeah, Sid, I think this is a great question, and I'm sure it's something that a lot of organizations are battling with the rapid move to digitization, and we're collecting more and more data from more and more systems. And there's a greater reliance on our external suppliers too. When you think of products which use software as a service, we've got infrastructure as a service providers, we've got platform as a service solutions, and even the transition to cloud-based environments, we're reliant heavily on our service providers to collect and store and maintain some of our key data attributes as well. So I believe there's certainly a need for organizations to understand and ensure that their service providers are taking just as much care of the data and how it's being collected as they would internally. So you need to have a really strong and consistent approach to collecting, storing, and managing data. And one thing I've seen work in our organization is a clear data strategy. And when I looked at our data strategy, I could see some of the key components that we were looking at. Assessing what our foundational data capabilities are. Do we have data governance, data quality management, insights and reporting? What's our capabilities in those areas? Understanding the key, the data lifecycle, the creation of the data, the ingestion of data, integration, reporting, and the analytics of data is all important, in understanding through the phases of data how you are maturing and where you sit within that data framework. And then more importantly, a data governance and maturity plan to assess how you're going to improve over time to ensure that the data you are capturing, you can make insightful decisions and it can be a benefit to the organization and a benefit to the bottom line.
Great, great. But it actually gives an like a thought for the second question that I wanted to know or ask. That I'm thinking, you talk about a lot of strategy, a lot of information about collecting data, but collecting data is one thing, and making sense of them, examining critical information and creating dashboards and insights for improvements is a different animal altogether, right? Because these are two different, very, very different things. And a lot of time people actually think that just collecting lots of data will give them very rich information, but probably that's not. Uh, so how do you manage the that this kind of creating dashboards, insights of for improvements? How do you do that at MLC?
Yeah, so it is another good question. Many organizations can often struggle with identifying insights from the huge amount of data which is now available. You know, this concept of being data rich but information poor, I see that and hear about that all the time. It's a continuing challenge. However, we can leverage some key solutions that it can assist us. You know, at MLC, we've been able to leverage some simple dashboard analytics like Power BI, which can automate the analysis of data and large data components and make it really accessible and consumable to people, leaders and end users in the organization. It can create some really meaningful visualizations of the data components and make it consumable as a platform. We saw this actually play out really effectively with some of our return to office statistics. So we started gathering information in relation to how our employees were returning back to the office post-pandemic, and understanding who was coming back into the office, and looking at productivity and whether an office environment was more effective than a home-based or a home working environment. So we were able to start gathering data and demonstrating and relaying that back to the management team, how often employees were coming back to the office, who was unable to come back to the office, and therefore have that conversation as to understand, why that was maybe a challenge and what people were feeling on that basis. Engaging your employees in this time is really highly important, and we see an office-based environment as being ability to collaborate, ability to have those conversations that you wouldn't normally have through Teams or Zoom. So we really wanted to encourage our employees back to the office, and being able to measure who was coming back and who wasn't on a really quick and efficient and effective manner was really vital to us. So it was a great example of using Power BI as a tool to access some data and to leverage that platform so that we could then display it to our leaders to have some conversations with their teams. Real-time information that was easily accessible. So tell us, Sid, at Vodafone, how did you develop a set of criteria to set a clear target to adding values?
Adding values. Certainly, Mike. I think I would rather start this saying that, like, we are a digital telco and we are an agile organization. And a lot of our B2C offerings are data driven. Uh, mm, Having said that, it's important to understand that data we collect will be of no use if we do not translate into actionable insights. So the keyword being actionable insights. Okay. I think I'm just echoing in the thought that you just said a couple of minutes back. I think it's most of us, whoever is hearing this conversation, and both of us, we understand that planning and analysis, recognizing a pattern, and then communicating insights, these are the bedrocks of big data, correct? But in my opinion, even before we walk that path, uh, we need to know things like how and what. Uh, Let me explain a little bit. For example, most of our B2C sites or websites maps 2 to 3 types of user. And based on the user type, we show our offerings or propositions. Right? I think this is a very normal scenario. But the difference that we make is, let's say you fire up a Vodafone website, not a corporate website, but a B2C website where you can buy mobile phones or plans or anything, something like that. And so obviously when you fire up for the first time and never visited the site before, system doesn't know that like who you are or where you're from. So the content that has been shown out there is very generic. By generic, I mean that like uh, uh, normal your propositions or normal plans and all this. It's not targeted as such. Right? But once you accept the cookies, right, and obviously like you need to accept certain cookies, and I think that's a very normal practice for every website, we will be able to map what are you looking for. So then over a period of time or browsing time, okay, our algorithm can predict some details about the user. So based on what they are searching, what they're looking for, what types of products they are going in, browsing through, next time when you come back, we will show offerings and propositions based on your previous search history or history. And then finally, when you are logged in, there obviously we know a lot about you because you are a logged in customer. We know where you stay, what are the things you have purchased before. So the content again changes. So if you notice that 3 times the content is changing. Okay? And this time when you're logged in, the information is more targeted. So overall, all our websites are very dynamic and it changes based on the kind of user you are. So it's, in a simple word, it's like a cycle, like, right? So planning, pattern recognition, gathering insights, and then finally translating those insights into actionable communication. And that's how we do it. So even if we plan a campaign, a digital campaign, like obviously we have to plan campaigns much beforehand they are live. So obviously we have to plan that campaign. But if our insight showed a different pattern, then obviously because we are an agile telco, we will be changing the propositions. And I think that's the beauty of working in a data-driven decision-making agile environment.
Yeah, that's a really good example of exactly that, what you said. Data-driven insight, supporting a decision or a strategic direction. The power of the understanding of your data can never be underestimated. This brings us to the end of our panel discussion. Was there anything else you wanted to put in, Sid?
I think there's a lot of, I would say, debate going on currently about privacy policy for Apple, or like how Facebook is collecting data. I think being in the industry for some time, I think it's very important that like to understand, yes, we need to collect data. That's for sure. There's no doubt about it. Right? But at the same time, I think the question that we need to ask ourselves, how much we can be ethical about it, because users are giving permissions to use their information, right? And nobody wants that like their information will be sold to some third party or something like that, right? So if I am gathering information, I think it's my duty or responsibility to protect that information, and so that like it never been breached, and let user know before collecting any information that like, look, these are the informations we are going to collect and for these reasons, and then let the user take the decision whether to give that permission or not. We should not be imposing that like, no, or just keep it in dark, the user, that like you can figure out how we are doing, what we are doing and collecting, just with one liner that your data will be used and it will be kept secret or private. I think that's, gone are those days. I think we need to be more explicit, more transparent, so that people can share their information and we can use them responsibly.
Okay.